Okay, so let's finish our footstep sounds. In the last tutorial we tried to compile it and there was an error. And the reason was, on line 55 there's an error. So I'm going to try and track it down really quick. So that's that, and that is that. What is the error? Step 1 sound. It's unfamiliar with step 1 sound. Ah, that's why. Because we have these as sound. So let's just rename these sound. Line 70. See, when you're trying to type fast and trying to get through one tutorial before the time limit is up, you're bound to come through so many errors. So there we have it. Except there's one thing, that there are two step sounds being created. So what we need to do is say that if my.skill1 is equal to 0, so if the player doesn't happen to be pushing the up button, then they're either not pushing anything or they're pushing the left and right buttons. So therefore the left and right buttons will only make a sound if you're not pushing the W button or the S button. Yeah, so they do sound a little strange. I found earlier when I was testing that by setting both to 2, oops, that light is on, this one is off. Okay. When you jump, the sound is stopped. Reset as soon as you land. Alright. There you have it. Some sound effects for your player's footsteps. Now I suppose with this extra time we could add in another sound effect for the jump, and not only that, but maybe place in a sound when the player lands. So when the player lands, we can say that, I mean, the likeliness that these would ever be not, or that these would be 0 at the same time is very, very rare. So I guess we could use that and say that if my skill 4 doesn't equal 0 and my skill 5 doesn't equal 0, then do all this. It will only do this set of action once, which means that we can take our, instead of step, play step 2, we can use step 1 and make use of it. So it'll only do this once. Alright, that makes sense. These are reset. Okay, well, instead of doing it that way, what I decided to do instead is if, let's say landing. I think we already have a variable named landing, so we'll say if, um, I guess landing technically would be fit. Give me a second here. Okay, I decided that that is the wrong place to put that, and that we're actually going to put that simply right here, because this is where the player has landed on the ground. So we may as well just place it there instead of trying to fit it somewhere else. Perfect. And because we have our run hooked up to work on our run animation, it keeps up to the appropriate footstep speed when you're running. Okay? So that's how you add sounds to your project. Very simple. And then there's also, for certain entities, for example, if you want like a monster to sneak up on you, you could use ENT play sound, I believe, yes. And you can set it so that me is the source rather than it playing through like directly out of the sound, that like instead of it just playing directly out of the speakers set to a particular value, it's actually depending on how close you are to that entity, well, that will determine how loud the sound is. But because the player is right at our camera, we can just use sound play, and that is perfect. So there we go. Now we have sounds, a jumping player, nice little room for him to jump in. What's next?